The vast, dark ocean of space near the blue-white star Sol was disturbed by a silent ripple of reality. One by one, sleek, gunmetal gray vessels slipped into existence, their hulls adorned with the sharp, angular insignia of the Galactic Empire. This was the 7th Survey Fleet, a modest but formidable collection of ships, tasked with cataloging new systems and assessing their potential, or their threat. On the command deck of the lead battlecruiser, the Iron Resolve, Admiral Te Haiyan gazed at the holographic display with an expression of mild boredom. He was a man in his late solar cycles, his hair streaked with silver, his face holding the calm patience of a career spent enforcing order on a chaotic galaxy. This was a routine assignment, far from the glittering core worlds. A new species, self-titled humans, had triggered automatic scanners with their first clumsy, faster-than-light jumps. The Empire had sent the standard welcome package, a list of laws and a request for diplomatic envoys, a cycle ago. Now it was time for the assessment. "Report," Te Haiyan said, his voice a low rumble dot at the sensor station. Officer Ji Wu, a young woman with keen eyes, tapped her console. Data streams flowed. Reading the 3rd planet, Admiral. Designation: Earth, multiple orbital installations. Low energy signatures. Primitive fission and fusion reactions detected on the planetary surface. Carbon-based industrial pollution is significant. At tactical, Officer Min Seok, his shoulders broad, studied his own screens. I am detecting 94 orbital objects with minor power outputs. They appear to be defensive satellites, maybe communication hubs. Their largest construct. He zoomed in the display. A long, spindly space station came into view, covered in blocky modules and solar panels. Is a habitat, not a warship. No significant armor, no energy shielding above basic radiation grade. Te Haiyan gave a slow nod. And their fleet? Ji Wu manipulated the controls. We have 17 vessels with subliminal drives active in the system. The largest is this one. An image resolved on the main viewer. It was a bulky, inelegant craft with visible weld lines and external piping. It had a few small laser turrets for clearing micro debris. Its identification beacon flickered. UNDAUNTL ESS. Min Seok actually snorted, a soft, dismissive sound. Their flagship? It is smaller than our utility shuttles. Mass is approximately 1/20th of a standard corvette. Power signature is negligible. If that is their best, they are Category D, maybe even E. Category D, non-threat monitor only. Category E, pre-industrial, not yet eligible for tithes. Send full active scans, Te Haiyan ordered. I want their metallurgy, their reactor efficiencies, everything. Pulses of advanced sensor energy washed over the human ships and stations. On the UNN Dauntless, alarms would have blared, lights would have flashed. The humans were being probed, studied like an insect under a magnifier. Back on the Iron Resolve, the data came in fast. Composition is basic titanium steel alloy, Ji Wu read out. Reactor technology is at least 3 generations behind Imperial standard. No evidence of gravitic manipulation or particle binding fields. Their weaponry appears to be chemical propellant projectile systems and low-yield directed energy. Their computers use binary silicon-based systems. Processing speeds are laughable. Te Haiyan felt the familiar routine settle in. Another backwater species, impressed with its own first steps into the dark, unaware of the true scale of the galaxy. They would either be grateful for Imperial protection or too frightened to object. He made his decision. Prepare the standard first contact data burst. Include the Imperial Legal Codex, volumes 1 through 50, and the preliminary tithe assessment for the Sol system. Set transmission to repeat on all frequencies. The comm officer, a man named Deho, worked quickly. "Ready, Admiral." "Send it." "And attach a visual message from me." Taehyun straightened his uniform and looked into the recording lens. His face was not unkind, but it was firm, the face of authority. "People of Earth, I am Admiral Taehyun of the Galactic Empire's 7th Survey Fleet. You have been assessed. Your system falls under the protective jurisdiction of the Empire. You will find the relevant laws and your resource obligations in the attached data. An Imperial governor will be assigned within the cycle. Comply, and you will prosper. Resist, and you will be brought to order. The galaxy has rules. Welcome to it." The data, a massive block of information that would take human scientists years to fully decipher, was fired towards Earth in a compressed burst. It was a one-way conversation. "Should we wait for a reply, sir?" Officer Ji Woo, as Taehyun looked once more at the image of the UNN Dauntless, floating like a child's toy against the black. "No," he said, turning away from the viewer. "There is nothing here that requires our time. Plot a course for the next system on the list. Engage the jump drives when ready." The fleet's engines began to glow with a familiar purple energy. The humans had not even attempted a hailing frequency. They were probably still reeling from the scans, trying to understand the technology that had so casually looked through their walls. It was beneath his concerned dot as the Iron Resolve powered up for its leap. A final sensor sweep echoed across the system. In a large orbital dock near Earth's moon, a new vessel was under construction. It was just a skeleton of girders. Its power source was listed on the scan as experimental fusion type. The computer automatically tagged it as potential monitor point, construction progress 2%. It was not a threat. It was a curiosity. On Earth, in a control center buried deep under a mountain range, a young woman named Su-min watched the alien fleet vanish from her screens. The data burst was still being decrypted, a terrifying flood of information. But her eyes were on the sensor logs of the Imperial scans. She rewound the footage, watching the precise, invasive energy patterns. "They didn't even say hello," she muttered to her colleague. A man named Ji-ho, who would one day command a very different Dauntless. Ji-ho watched the empty space where the majestic, terrifying ships had been. They looked at us and saw nothing, just empty space. Su-min's lips pressed into a thin line. She turned from the screen to a complex schematic on her own terminal. It showed a reactor design that human physics said was impossible, a twisting knot of magnetic fields and gravitational theory. The Imperial scan had labeled it inefficient theoretical model, not feasible. "They saw what they wanted to see," she said softly, her fingers flying over the keyboard, making adjustments. "They saw their own shadow. Not us." The Galactic Empire left, confident, already forgetting the little blue world. On Earth, the polite requests for clarification on the tithe were drafted by diplomats. And in a dozen labs and shipyards, work continued. Not on building copies of Imperial ships, but on building something else entirely. Something the Empire's scanners, locked into their understanding of physics, had failed to recognize as power. They had seen the rust on the outside. They had not seen the new kind of fire being kindled within. Governor Jun-ho of the Terran sector was not a patient man. His office, high in a spire on the imperial world of Terran Prime, overlooked a city of geometric perfection. Everything here followed the rules, from the traffic flow in the sky lanes to the regulated growth cycles of the purple spire trees. The recent data packet from the Sol system, however, was an irregularity. It sat in his mind like a smudge on a clean viewport. He called up the report from Admiral Taehyun on his desk hologram. Category D non-threat. Preliminary tithe established. 40% of system mineral yields. 15% of biological produce. Annual conscription of able-bodied beings for labor battalions. Standard. The humans had not accepted. They had not refused either. Their reply, when it finally came after many days, was a stream of polite, bureaucratic questions. They asked for clarification of legal precedents. They requested negotiations on equitable terms. They used phrases like sovereign equality and mutually beneficial dialogue. Jun-ho scowled. Mutually beneficial? The benefit was not mutual. The benefit was order. The galaxy was ordered under the Imperial banner. These humans, fresh from their mud ball, were questioning the order. This could not stand. If one little system in his sector started asking questions, others might get ideas. He needed a swift, clean example. He would not waste a full fleet. That would give them too much importance. A single ship would do. A powerful one, to show the iron fist within the velvet glove. He selected the battle cruiser Glorious Dawn. It was a ship designed to inspire awe and fear in equal measure, with a hull like a black dagger and rows of glowing plasma batteries. Its captain Du Yun was a good officer. Not imaginative, but reliable. He followed orders. He understood the importance of a show of force. Jun-ho recorded a new message. Captain Du Yun, you are to proceed to the Sol system. You will secure the primary orbital docking facility and their largest warship, the UNN Dauntless, as a material penalty for their delayed compliance. Use minimal necessary force, but ensure there is no misunderstanding about Imperial authority. Their obedience must be public and absolute. Du Yun received the orders on the bridge of the Glorious Dawn. He was a man who saw the universe in clear lines. There was the Empire, and there was everything else. His job was to make everything else align with the first. He reviewed the tactical data on Sol. One look at the scans of the human vessels, and his lip curled slightly. This was not a military operation. It was a collection duty. The Glorious Dawn made the jump. It arrived in the Sol system, not with the subtle ripple of the survey fleet, but with a violent crack of displaced energy, announcing its presence with brute force. It ignored the hailing attempts from the human orbital traffic control. It drove straight for Earth, its shadow falling over the planet's moon. On Earth, alarms that had never been silenced from the first visit began to blare again. This time, the ship was not scanning. It was approaching with clear intent, its weapons ports open. Panic flickered through the networks, but a different kind of response was already unfolding. In a command center on Earth, Captain Ji-ho of the UNN Dauntless was called from a strategy meeting. His face on the screens of his crew was calm. He had waited for this, hoped it wouldn't come, but prepared as if it would. He gave a single order to his skeleton crew aboard the docked Dauntless. Initiate activation sequence. Prepare for immediate departure. On the Glorious Dawn, Du Yun watched the small, blocky shape of the human ship detach from its docking cradle. It moved slowly on conventional thrusters. He almost laughed. It was actually coming out to meet him. This was better than he hoped. A public submission required an audience. Destroying their only real ship would make a fine lesson. Open a channel to that vessel. Du Yun commanded. The comms officer worked. Channel open, sir. Audio and visual. Du Yun faced the screen. Human vessel Dauntless. This is Captain Du Yun of the Imperial battlecruiser Glorious Dawn. By order of Governor Jun-ho of the Terran sector, you are hereby instructed to surrender your ship and submit to boarding. Your orbital facilities are now under Imperial control. Power down your engines and weapon systems. You have 1 standard minute to comply. On the bridge of the Dauntless, Ji-ho looked at the fierce face on his screen. He saw the arrogance, the absolute certainty. He thought of Su Min's reports, of the years of secret work, of the quiet, desperate hope that they were wrong about the galaxy. He was not a diplomat. He was a soldier. His reply was simple. Captain Du Yun, this is United Nations space. You are in violation of our sovereignty. You are ordered to withdraw immediately. A silence fell on the bridge of the glorious dawn. The officers stared. Did the human just give them an order? Du Yun's face darkened. This was insolence of the highest order. A lesson was indeed needed. Target their primary engine block with a secondary battery, he said, his voice cold. A warning shot. Let's see if their courage holds when their hull is venting atmosphere. The tactical officer selected a single plasma cannon. A bright green lance of energy flashed across the void. It was a light weapon for the Empire, barely more than a spark. For a human ship of known design, it would have been a crippling blow. On the Dauntless, alarm screamed as the plasma bolt streaked in. Ji-Ho did not flinch. Activate the shunt, now. In the engineering bay, Su-Min's hands were already hovering over the control interface for the gravitic flux shunt. It wasn't a shield. It was something else. She initiated the sequence dot to the Imperial sensors. Something strange happened. For a microsecond, the space around the human ship seemed to warp, like a mirage. The plasma bolt, which was on a perfect trajectory, suddenly bent away as if repelled by a powerful, invisible magnet. It missed the Dauntless by 100 meters and dissipated harmlessly into the dark. On the glorious dawn, the tactical officer blinked. Sir, the shot missed. A sensor anomaly, perhaps. Atmospheric diffraction from the planet? Du Yun frowned. That made no sense. There was no atmosphere here. Run diagnostics. Then target them again. This time, a full volley from the same battery. Remove their ability to move. 3 more plasma bolts fired in quick succession. On the Dauntless, Su-Min watched her monitors, her heart hammering. The shunt capacitors were recycling, but they were slow. Incoming. Multiple strikes. Ji-Ho gripped the edge of his console. Evasive pattern 0. The Dauntless's new thrusters flared, a sudden, shocking burst of acceleration that pushed the crew into their seats. The ship jinked to the side. 1 bolt missed. The second grazed the edge of the old titanium steel hull, melting a deep scar but not penetrating. The third was coming in dead center. Shunt is not ready. Su-Min yelled. The bolt hit. A flash of light enveloped the forward section of the Dauntless. On the glorious dawn, there were nods of satisfaction. That was more like it, but as the light faded, the human ship was still there. Its old-fashioned hull was blackened and molten in a large circle amidships, but the internal layers held. A new type of crystalline armor laminate, designed to dissipate thermal energy, had done its job. It was badly damaged, but it had held. Smoke filled the corridors of the Dauntless. Alarms wailed, but Ji-Ho's voice was steady over the comms. All sections report damage. The reports came back. The hit was severe, but not critical. The old hull had taken the blow the new systems could not yet stop. Ji-Ho looked at the image of the glorious dawn, looming like a mountain. The warning was over. Now the test began. He opened the channel again to the Imperial ship. His face was smudged with soot, his uniform jacket torn. He spoke slowly, clearly. Captain Du Yun, you have fired upon a United Nations vessel. This is your only chance. Power down your weapons and withdraw. On the glorious dawn, Du Yun felt a hot rush of anger. The human ship was damaged, smoking, and its captain was still giving orders. This was an infection. It needed to be burned out, immediately and completely. He forgot about taking the ship as a prize. He forgot about minimal force. His voice was a snarl. All forward batteries. Target that ship. Fire at will. Reduce it to atoms. Across the broad face of the Imperial battlecruiser, the main weapon ports glowed a deadly, gathering green. On the bridge of the glorious dawn, Captain Duyun's command echoed with finality. The order was not just to destroy, but to obliterate, to erase the insult from the stars. The massive plasma batteries hummed with gathered energy, a sound felt in the bones of every crew member. This was the Empire's answer to defiance. Absolute, overwhelming firepower. On the UNN Dauntless, the air was thick with smoke and the sharp smell of burnt wiring. Captain Ji-ho watched the enemy ship light up like a cruel green constellation on his tactical screen. The scar on his ship's hull throbbed with residual heat. He had given his warning. It had been ignored. Now, there were no more rules from the old world. Zoom in, he said, his voice cutting through the chaos on the engineering channel. Full power to the shunt, now, and ready the primary. In engineering, Su-min's hands flew across her console. Her face was pale but set. This was the moment her life's work, the work of thousands, would be tested not in a lab, but in fire. Bringing the gravitic flux shunt to 100%. It will hold for 3 seconds. No more. She then turned to another station. K cannon is charged. Trajectory is locked. The Kagen. A simple name for a terrifying idea. While the Empire used guided plasma and particle beams, human scientists had taken a different path. They asked a simple question. What is the simplest, most unstoppable force in the universe? Their answer was mass, moving very, very fast. On the Imperial sensors, the readings from the human ship did something impossible. Its energy signature, which had been a faint, struggling flicker, suddenly spiked. It went off the standard scale, peeking into the red zone reserved for Imperial dreadnoughts. Then, just as suddenly, it vanished. Not dampened, not hidden. It went to zero. It was as if the ship had simply ceased to exist for a moment. Sensor failure. Ji Woo, back on the Iron Resolve, monitoring the live feed from light minutes away, would have cried out. On the glorious dawn, a tactical officer stared, confused. Target signature is gone. Some kind of stealth field? Duyun leaned forward. It's a trick. Fire. Fire all batteries. It was too late. The Dauntless executed its maneuver. The flux shunt did not make the ship move. It twisted the space around it. To the naked eye, the human ship seemed to blur, to stretch, and then snap back into place. In that instant, the space it occupied was not truly there. The entire forward barrage, from the glorious dawn 16 lances of star-hot plasma passed through empty space. They continued into the void, harmlessly, leaving the Dauntless untouched, pristine aside from its earlier wound. The silence on the Imperial bridge was deafening. Every officer stared at the main viewer, where the small, blocky human ship hung, completely unharmed. The power reading flickered back, settling at a level that was still low, but now carried a chilling mystery. How? Duyun began, but the word died in his throat. On the Dauntless, Ji-ho did not celebrate. His eyes were hard. Shunt is down. K-cannon is ready. Fire. There was no bright beam, no missile trail. From a newly fashioned turret on the Dauntless, a magnetic rail launched a projectile. It was not large, about the size of a ground car. It was not explosive. It was a solid rod of depleted uranium, tungsten, and a core of impossibly dense material. It was fired not with chemical propellant, but with a cascade of gravitic pulses that accelerated it in stages along the length of the ship to Imperial sensors. It appeared as a sudden, fast-moving object. Its speed was ridiculous. It was moving at a significant fraction of the speed of light. Point defense lasers on the glorious dawn automatically targeted it. They hit it, vaporizing microscopic layers of its surface. but they could not alter its course or meaningfully slow it. It was a bullet fired from a cosmic rifle. The tactical officer on the Imperial ship had only time to whisper, "Kinetic impactor. Velocity extreme." Shields cannot. The projectile struck the glorious dawn. It did not explode on impact. It simply arrived. The Imperial ship's energy shields, designed to diffuse heat and particle energy, flared for a nanosecond and then shattered like glass. The projectile punched through the outer armor, through 3 internal decks thick with machinery and living quarters, through the secondary reactor housing, and finally came to rest deep in the engineering spine of the great ship. Then, and only then, did its energy release. The stored kinetic energy of its unbelievable speed converted instantly to heat. The effect was not an explosion from the outside in, but a sun being born from the inside out. From the viewpoint of the Dauntless, the Imperial battlecruiser simply flashed white from within. A dozen violent eruptions blew out its sides. The sleek, dagger-like shape deformed, bulging, then breaking apart in a silent, catastrophic bloom of fire and debris. Chunks of molten metal and composite sprayed outward. The lights on its hull died. All at once. In less than 10 seconds from the order to fire, the glorious dawn was gone. An expanding cloud of glittering wreckage marked where it had been. On the Dauntless, the crew was silent. They had trained for this, simulated it 1,000 times. Seeing it was different. It was not a victory cheer that filled the bridge, but a profound, trembling quiet. They had just killed thousands. They had just rewritten the rules of their existence. Chi-Ho let out a slow breath. "Status report. Minimal recoil stress on our frame," an officer said, her voice shaky. "K cannon requires 12 minutes to recharge and re-rod. Flux shunt capacitors are depleted. Hull breach on decks 4 and 5 contained. Send a general distress signal on Imperial frequencies," Chi-Ho ordered. "Mark the coordinates of the debris field. Offer humanitarian assistance to any escape pods." He knew it was a gesture. The violence of the kill likely left no pods intact. But the gesture mattered. It was the difference between what they were and what they had just fought. Light minutes away, on the bridge of the survey fleet's flagship, the Iron Resolve, Admiral Tae-Hyon had watched the entire engagement on a delayed feed. He had seen the warning shot bend away. He had seen the main barrage pass through nothing. He had seen the single, swift, brutal retaliation that annihilated one of his empire's frontline warships. The data was replayed, analyzed. The science officers were babbling, talking about localized gravitational lensing and relativistic kinetics. The tactical officers were pale, running simulations that all ended the same way. The Imperial ship had done everything by the book. The human ship had used a different book. A book written in a language the Empire did not understand. Tae-Hyon stood up from his command chair. His face, usually so composed, was ashen. He walked to the main viewer, now showing the last image of the Dauntless, floating calmly beside the grave of the glorious dawn. The scar on its hull was clearly visible. It had been hurt by their old technology. But its new technology had not just won. It had dismissed the enemy entirely. Officer Ji-Woo finally found her voice, a hushed, horrified whisper that carried across the silent bridge. "Impossible." She breathed, her eyes wide as she stared at the impossible ship. That's a human warship." The phrase hung in the air. It was no longer a description. It was a realization. A category had just been shattered. The Empire had thought humanity was a non-threat. They were wrong. They were not even a known threat. They were an impossibility. And impossibilities, in a universe of strict laws and predictable power, were the most dangerous thing of all. The silence on the bridge of the Iron Resolve was a physical thing, heavy and cold. Admiral Tehion stared at the frozen tactical image, the drifting, scarred human vessel, the glittering debris that was once the glorious dawn. Officer Ji Woo's whisper, "Impossible." "That's a human warship," echoed in his mind, not as a protest, but as a grim new fact. A fact that had just rewritten the fate of his career, and possibly his empire. He turned slowly. Every officer was looking at him, their faces pale, their eyes wide with shock they were trained to suppress. "Seal all records of this engagement," Tehion said, his voice raspy but firm. "Classification, Ultima. Direct feed to the Sector Command and the Imperial High Command on the capital world only. No secondary copies." "Admiral," Minsioka Tactical began, his voice unsteady. "Their weapon, the physics, are not the question right now, officer," Tehion interrupted, though the same question screamed in his own head. "The question is intent and survival. Plot a course back to the edge of the Sol system. Maximum safe jump distance. We are not engaging. We are observing." The 7th Survey Fleet, which had arrived with bored arrogance, departed the inner system with the haste of a startled animal. They regrouped at the system's outer asteroid belt, a safe distance away. From there, they watched. They listened. The human ship, the Dauntless, was broadcasting a simple, repeating message on Imperial emergency bands. "This is the UN Dauntless to any Imperial survivors. We are providing coordinates of the debris field. We offer humanitarian aid and medical assistance. Please respond." No response came. The offer itself was a chilling piece of data for Tehion. They had just destroyed a capital ship with terrifying ease, and their first act was to offer help. Was it a trick? A cultural oddity? Or was it a confidence so deep it could afford mercy? The reply from Sector Command, when it came, was not from Governor Junho. It was from a higher military authority, and it was frantic. The decoded message was a stream of demands and contradictions. Verified data. Explain failure. Hold position, but do not provoke. The honor of the Empire is at stake. Tehion read between the lines. The High Command was panicking. They did not understand what had happened, and in the Empire, what was not understood was a vulnerability. Vulnerabilities were to be eliminated. A new order, stamped with the seal of the Sector Admiral, overrode the previous confusion. Admiral Tehion, you will return to Sol with the full strength of the 7th Fleet. You will demonstrate overwhelming force. You will secure a surrender or a ceasefire from the human government. Their technology is to be confiscated. Do not return without success. He looked at the order, then at the sensor logs of the glorious dawn's final seconds. Demonstrate overwhelming force. Against what? He had no idea what he was facing. But he was a soldier of the Empire. He had his orders. Form the fleet into a line of battle, he said, the weight of duty settling on his shoulders like iron. All ships to combat readiness. We jump to the orbit of the humans' 4th planet, their Mars. We will approach Earth from there. It will give us time to be seen. Days later, the 7th Fleet emerged from its jump near the Red Planet. It was an impressive sight. 3 battle cruisers, including the Iron Resolve, each larger than the lost Glorious Dawn, a dozen supporting cruisers and destroyers. Their formation was perfect, their weapons powered, their shields glowing. A display meant to crush hope before a shot was fired. They began their slow, majestic advance toward the blue-green dot of Earth. Tehion expected to see panic. He expected desperate hails, last-minute negotiations. He did not expect what his sensors showed him. 5 human ships had left Earth orbit and were moving to intercept. They were not the blocky, primitive things from the initial scans. These were new. Their designs were sleek, angular, and utterly alien. They had no visible weapon ports, only smooth, dark halls that seemed to drink the light. They took up a formation directly in the fleet's path. They did not broadcast threats. They simply waited. "Open a channel," Taehyun ordered, his mouth dry. The main viewer flickered. This time, it was not a ship captain who appeared. It was an older woman, her hair streaked with gray, her uniform simple and dark. Her eyes held a calm that was deeper than Taehyun's own forced composure. It was the calm of someone who has already looked into the abyss and was not afraid. "Admiral Taehyun," the woman said. Her voice was clear, without hostility. "I am Admiral Yuna of the United Nations Sol Defense Force. You are in sovereign human space. You are accompanied by vessels that have participated in an act of aggression against us. You will power down your weapons, withdraw outside the orbit of your Neptune equivalent, and await diplomatic envoys. There will be no further warnings." The sheer, breathtaking audacity of it left Taehyun speechless for a moment. She was dictating terms to a full Imperial battle fleet. "Admiral Yuna," he replied, forcing his voice to remain steady. "You destroyed an Imperial vessel. You are in violation of Imperial law. My orders are to secure your surrender and your technology. Stand down your ships, or we will be forced to demonstrate the full might of the Empire." On the sensor station, Officer Ji Woo made a small, choked sound. "Admiral?" she said, her voice trembling. "The lead human ship. Its mass readings. They're wrong. The gravimetric sensors. They're showing a density that shouldn't be possible. And their power cores. The energy signature is not plasma, not antimatter. It's like a controlled stellar forge. It's simulating a miniature star inside that hull. The output, it's off our scale." A cold sweat broke out on Taehyun's back. He looked from Ji-woo's horrified face to the calm face of Admiral Yuna on the screen. She had not blinked. She was waiting. Min-seok at Tactical spoke, his professional pride crumbling into raw data. "I have firing solutions, but their formation. It makes no tactical sense from our doctrine. They're not covering each other. They're positioned like points on a grid, a mathematical grid, and their hull composition. Sensors cannot get a clear reading. It's like it's shifting." Taehyun felt the bridge of the Iron resolve, a place that had always felt like the solid heart of Imperial power become suddenly fragile. He was not looking at warships. He was looking at manifestations of a science he did not comprehend. The human ship before had been a test, a prototype. These were the finished product. He had his orders. Demonstrate overwhelming force. But what was force against the impossible? He made a choice. Not as a conqueror, but as a commander trying to save the lives of his crews from a mystery he could not fight. He would follow protocol. He would give the order to attack. And he would see, once and for all, what they were truly facing. "All vessels," he said, the words tasting of ash. "Target the lead human ship. Disabling shots only." It was a futile qualifier, and he knew it. "Admiral Yuna," he said, meeting her gaze on the screen. "You leave me no choice." Her reply was a simple, slow nod. Not of acceptance, but of understanding. The channel closed. The Imperial fleet opened fire. A storm of green plasma and lancing particle beams crossed the void, a display of power that would have vaporized asteroids and shattered moons. And then the humans responded. The storm of Imperial fire streaked across the void, a blinding spectacle of destructive power. On the bridge of the Iron Resolve, Admiral Taehyun watched, his heart a cold stone in his chest. He had given the order, but he felt no hope of victory. He was a man conducting a terrible experiment. The human ships did not try to dodge. They did not activate the strange bending field the Dauntless had used. They simply took the hits, Or rather, their hulls accepted them. The visual feed was anticlimactic. The brilliant green plasma bolts struck the dark, angular hull of Admiral Yuna's flagship. They did not explode. They did not scar the surface. They splashed like liquid thrown against a wall, and then spread out into a crawling network of fiery veins before dissolving into harmless clouds of dissipating energy. The particle beams simply faded as they touched the hull, their energy seemingly siphoned away into nothingness. No alarms sounded on the human ships. No debris floated away. They hung in space, utterly unmoved, like mountains enduring a rainstorm, shields at 100%. A tactical officer on the Iron Resolve reported automatically, then stopped, his voice cracking. I mean, they're shields. No reduction. No impact registered. At all. A new kind of quiet, deeper than before, fell over the Imperial bridge. This was not a missed shot or a clever trick. This was a statement. Imperial weapons, the backbone of galactic dominance for centuries, were useless. Admiral Yuna's face reappeared on the main viewer. She showed no anger, no triumph, only a faint disappointment, as if a teacher had watched a student repeat the same mistake. Your demonstration is concluded, Admiral Taeyon, she said. Now you will witness ours. Do not interfere. The channel closed again. The 5 human ships moved. They did not surge forward. They flowed. Their acceleration was instantaneous, without the flare of visible thrusters. They shot past the Imperial line, not towards the capital ships, but towards the smaller, faster destroyers and cruisers on the flanks. What followed was not a battle. It was surgery. From ports that irised open on their smooth hulls, the human ships fired precise, blindingly fast streaks of light. These were not the slow, massive kinetic rods. These were something else, packets of coherent energy that moved at near light speed. They struck not the main bodies of the Imperial ships, but their weapon arrays, their engine nacelles, their sensor spines. On the Iron Resolve, the damage reports began to flash in from the fleet, each one a cry of confusion. Cruiser Valiant's forward batteries destroyed. No hull breach. Destroyer Swiftblade has lost primary thrust. Engines are offline. No explosion. All targeting sensors on the Lance of Justice are gone. They're blind. The human ships wove through the Imperial formation with impossible grace. Imperial point defense lasers fired constantly, creating a net of light. None of it connected. The human vessels slid through the gaps with a prescience that seemed like magic. Their own fire never missed. Each shot was a scalpel, removing a system, disarming a weapon, crippling mobility. Taeyon saw a cruiser attempt to ram a human ship that had drifted too close. The human ship did not move away. At the last second, a bubble of distorted space flickered around it. The cruiser's nose crumpled against an invisible, immovable wall. Its own velocity turned against it. While the human ship floated on, unperturbed. It was over in less than 10 minutes. When the human ships pulled back, regrouping in their original grid formation, the Imperial 7th Fleet was adrift. Not destroyed, not vaporized, but neutered. Every capital ship had its main weapons sheared off. Every engine was disabled or gone. Sensor masts were melted stumps. Wreckage, but controlled, precise wreckage, drifted around the Imperial vessels like metallic confetti. Not a single Imperial life pod had ejected, because not a single main reactor had been breached. The humans had inflicted maximum humiliation with minimal loss of life. On the bridge of the Iron Resolve, the only sounds were the frantic beeps of system failure alerts and the shallow breathing of the crew. The main viewer showed the silent, dark forms of the human ships, hovering like judges. Admiral Taeyon slowly unbuckled from his command chair. His legs felt weak. He walked to the front viewport, past officers who sat stunned at their stations. He looked out at the naked eye view. He could see the human flagship, a dark speck against the stars. It was pristine. Not a mark, not a scorch, not a hint of damage. Behind him, he heard Tactical Officer Min Seok. His voice was not a shout, not a whisper, but a hollow, broken thing, stripped of all pride and certainty. It was the sound of a paradigm shattering. Impossible. Min Seok breathed, his eyes glued to his ruined screens. That's a human warship. This time, the phrase held no surprise, only a dreadful, final understanding. It was an epitaph for Imperial supremacy, a final automated priority message flashed on Taehyon's command screen. It was from the human fleet. Coordinates for a neutral meeting point near the moon. A list of required representatives. Terms for a ceasefire. It was not a request. It was itinerary. Taehyon turned to his communications officer, Dae-ho. His voice was old and tired. Send to all ships. Stand down. All systems to idle. Prepare to be boarded for emergency humanitarian aid. He then looked at Ji-woo. Prepare the full sensor log. All of it for the High Command. Mark it with my final evaluation. What is the evaluation, Admiral? Ji-woo asked, her face pale. Taehyon looked once more at the impossible ships. Category: Omega. Existential paradox. Do not engage. Re-evaluate everything. On Earth, in her lab, Engineer Su-min received the tactical feed. She watched the flawless ballet of her creations, the perfect application of theory into reality. There were no cheers here either. Her team was quiet, watching the consequences of their genius unfold on the screen. A colleague, a young physicist named Hyein, let out a shaky breath. We won. Su-min shook her head slowly, her eyes on the drifting, disarmed Imperial fleet. No, she said softly. We didn't win a war. We ended a conversation they started. They came with rules written in fire. We just showed them we use a different kind of math. She closed the feed and opened a new schematic. It was not for a weapon. It was for a communications array designed to translate not just language, but concepts. The real work was only now beginning. The Empire had panicked when it saw a warship it could not understand. The harder task, Su-min knew, would be making them understand the people who built it. People who, when pushed, didn't just learn the rules of the game, they quietly, patiently built a new game board.